Welcome to A Lunch with Biggie, a podcast about small business and creatives sharing their stories and inspiring you. My guests today run a neighborhood general store, a cocktail lounge, a chef's table located at the second floor at East End Market. Please welcome the co-owner, Brittany Zepf, and general manager, Brianna Gonsorek of the Neighbors. Thank you very much, ladies, for coming by. How are you guys doing today?
Yay,
Good.
great.
I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. I'm excited for you.
having us.
I'm excited for you guys to have my lunch break with me. My first question I usually ask is, what's your go-to sandwich lunch?
Ooh. All right. So I know you asked this, and so I've kind of thought about it a little bit, which is hard for me because I feel like sandwiches, whenever anybody's like, okay, one food that you can have all the time, what would it be? It'd probably be sandwiches. But I think I narrowed it down to two. It's going to be either the cheesesteak or the Reuben.
Those are good. Those are great choices.
Yeah. I'm Polish, so sauerkraut is like a big thing for me.
So the Reuben even more so then.
Probably more so than the cheesesteak.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And what about you, Brittany? What's your go-to sandwich or lunch?
I feel like it depends on the mood a little bit, you know?
Always.
I also feel like I love breakfast, so I want to like straight away say like a bacon, egg, and cheese.
Yeah.
But my Italian heart also would like to say like a good Italian like pressed sandwich.
Okay.
Like Italian meats, you know?
Yeah.
Like pepperoni, salami,
Mhm.
all that.
All
kind
those
of
are
stuff.
delicious. All those are delicious.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong with any
that
of
would be
those.
a go-to.
No, I think that's a good one. So, so I talked about, obviously we're in the Neighbors, and I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about it. So if you can kind of give people a little bit of an idea, describe and tell people a little bit about how you guys came up with the concept of the Neighbors.
Sure. So the Neighbors, obviously, like you said, it's a mix of retail, cocktail. We have a chef's table. If you would like, I can start from the very beginning of really how the concept all got started.
I'm curious. I'm always curious about stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just know we're at a lunch break, so I'm not, I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Yeah. So if we start from the very beginning, so Jacob actually started a store called Outfitters in Winter Park. That was off the top of my head, I would say maybe 8 years ago now.
Okay.
Just a little retail store. So that was kind of the start of his little small business era. He met Seth doing workshops, which I'm sure Seth probably explained to you on his
Seth provided, yes, he was actually Seth from FreeHand Goods. It was on our podcast, so you can definitely listen to their story on that. Yeah.
Yeah. So he met Seth when they were doing workshops. They started FreeHand Goods. It started off, Jacob was doing little like pop-ups with this trailer. He did some pop-ups at the market, and then they actually opened a store within East End Market, which was FreeHand Goods. So that started. FreeHand's been there for about 6 years now. But along that way, Jacob had always kind of wanted to open like a bar and retail concept ever since, I've known him ever since we were dating, everything. So it came to a point, and I want to say that it was like during COVID that he was probably like thinking about a lot of this. And then he came to me and he was like, hey, would you want to like quit your job and do this with me? I have the background in obviously the hospitality industry. I was a bar manager when Domu opened there. And then other than that, I've just worked in the service industry all my life, bartending, serving, all the things. So he was like, you can help me run that side of things. I'll do the retail. He has the business side. And he's like, let's start looking for places. And of course, from there, I was just like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
I didn't really like my job at the time either. So it was kind of like a perfect little, start to the adventure.
Yeah.
So we started looking for places in the area. It took us probably around a year. But at that time, obviously, FreeHand was still within the market. Jacob, over time, developed a really good relationship with John Reif, who is the owner of East End Market.
Yeah.
Yep. And it was like one day, I think John, I'm not really even sure who came to who about it, but John was like, I kind of want to turn the Apex place, which was a ballroom, into like an ongoing thing. And he, I think, knew that Jacob and I were looking for places. And he was like, do you want to turn this into something? And of course, that was like, at that point, I think we had an opportunity somewhere where we were about to like close on it, and we were super excited. And then there was a couple red flags. So we were like, okay, let's listen to the red flags and, let's go with this instead. So we dropped that and then started kind of working on it with him. And in that time, it probably took around still like probably a full year for us to get like fully open. And at that time, it was still kind of just retail and bar, but we had the kitchen. So we were like, we don't want to like not utilize this,
Correct.
obviously. So, but we also didn't really want to be the ones to do the food. Because like, even though I've been in service industry, it's mainly just been bar serving, not back of house whatsoever. And then he obviously wouldn't know that either.
Yeah.
So
another animal.
yeah, exactly. So just being that I had the relationship with Domu, and you know, just knowing that like Sonny has had so much success, and that, you know, his business has had so much success, and they know a ton of other chefs and entrepreneurs in that business, we kind of like met with them and pitched them the idea of doing something in our kitchen. And that's kind of how the pop-up of like having, you know, pop-up chefs came into play. So the idea came to be that like the Neighbors is an incubator for up-and-coming chefs in the area. So when we opened, the idea was to be like kind of like every 6 months we would have a chef and their team in the kitchen. And then someone, you know, they would go off and get a brick and mortar. That would be the point of it. And then someone new would come in. So it is.
So is it kind of like for them to test their concept or
Yes,
their idea?
absolutely.
Which is very similar to what East End is.
Exactly.
So it's kind of plays
Yes.
into the
Yes.
total concept of what East End is.
Yes. So yeah. So that was kind of another thing too, is that when we were opening the Neighbors, even before like I think finding a space and talking to John, we thought about doing something with like having all small businesses in one place, and we were like, oh, we could call it the Neighbors, because it's kind of like, you know, saying like meet the neighbors, meet all of
Drink with your neighbors,
drink with
shop
your neighbors,
from
shop
your
with your neighbors.
neighbors,
Like this is all of the small businesses together in one place.
Yeah.
And I obviously, you know, it worked out that it was here because we were able to just like extend the vision of East End, you know, with them having all small businesses within the market. And, you know, now we're just continuing to extend that vision with not only the retailers, but then also the chef's table experience, or any chef in the kitchen where, you know, they start small business and then go on to their own place. And then, you know, so it's now been 1.5 years, and we've had the same Camille in our kitchen doing the chef's table dining experience, and they are about to open a brick and mortar in Audubon Park. So that will probably, obviously, everybody knows with construction, that kind of stuff takes a long time.
Takes a while.
Yeah, so it'll probably be within the next 2 months or so. We're not really sure still. But then after that, we'll have somebody new in the kitchen, and it'll be a whole new experience. So
Interesting. So,
yeah.
and would it be the same type of food or just something totally different? It's just like it's a taste. It's a different taste. You don't know what you're going to get yet?
Yeah, we don't know.
Okay.
We honestly, even us, we're still a little bit, we have like a couple people in mind, but we're not exactly sure who it's going to be.
Yeah.
I think ideally the chef's table experience, in the beginning, it was kind of like, we were worried about it because we were like, how are we going to do like a laid back neighborhood vibe that's like retail bar concept, and then also add like a fine dining,
Upscale dining,
somewhat
yeah.
experience. But it's worked out really well. And it kind of, I think just because like even when you're sitting at the dinner, like Jacob and I have sat at the dinner and had it a few times, and like even when you're sitting there, you don't know what's going on behind you. 'Cause
Yeah.
they're doing such a good job at kind of like keeping you, you know, involved in everything, and you know, presenting the dishes, and so
It's a very personal, experience.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, so it's worked really well. I feel like the next person that we have in our kitchen will probably still have a chef's table experience, just because it's just something special to have, but we would also like to offer a la carte menu options as well. So we're not exactly set up to be like a full-on restaurant.
Correct.
But I would love to have like small plates, you know, things that we can offer all the time.
Yeah.
So stay tuned.
I like that.
Yeah.
So Bree, how do you, I know you're pretty much like the manager of the day-to-day operations of the Neighbors.
Yeah.
Tell folks a little bit about the concept of how, and obviously Brittany, you as well, to get involved in this, but like how did you guys come about, like who is going to be part of like your Neighbors as when it comes to the aspect of vendors?
So when we first started out, it was kind of a mix of Jacob and I kind of just, I work in markets a lot. Just since I am a maker too, I had been to a lot of markets. I knew a lot of artists. So for me, I was excited to jump on board and kind of take that opportunity to join Neighbors on that end and work with the vendors in just a completely different aspect. I came on board from, just to give a little background, how I joined with the Neighbors is, again, it was kind of like a fate thing for me where it was like right time and right place that I started working for FreeHand Goods. I left a job and took a little hiatus, and when I was looking again, something came up from them, and it's been one of the best things that's happened for me. So but after being with them for a while, and they had introduced me to this concept that they were thinking of with the Neighbors, and I do think that it just ended up being a really great fit. And I think when we were starting at the beginning, it was most of the vendors, as you know, East End has a lot of pop-ups.
Yeah.
They were doing like Third Fridays and pop-ups,
Evening exchange,
and stuff on the weekends. So that was kind of when we first started our go-to vendors, just because we had worked with them a lot, very familiar with their products, turnaround time, stuff like that. So those were kind of the first artists that we reached out to right away. And a lot of them were excited to get on board. And, we always want to make sure that it's the best relationship for the artist as well, too, So we do operate via wholesale here. So I know some shops in the area are consignment. Since we have so many vendors and makers, I think we're up to probably about 75 or 80 different makers in here now. When we started out, it was probably closer to 40 or so, I would say. So we've definitely added a lot, and we're kind of always changing the shop storefront. So, we always love the idea of having new artists, adding new artists. But that was kind of when we started. We just were originally seeking out people that we were familiar with and knew really well. And then from there, it just kind of branched out to different avenues, just whether it be out and about going to markets and seeing a product you really think will fit well in the shop, grabbing a card, reaching out to them. Sometimes it's searching on Fair for local artists. Also, everyone that we have in the shop, too, they are all local to Florida. I'd say about probably 75% of those local to Central Florida, but it is across the state. But everybody is a Floridian that we have in there, a Floridian maker. So
yeah, it's definitely, you guys have it's funny because whenever we need to go shopping, that's kind of like, I just come in and I'm like, okay, my wife has to buy a gift or I have to buy a gift. We'll just walk in and we're like, okay, go to the Neighbors. And we would walk in and literally you can just walk around and just literally find something, and then it's like you're supporting another small business. You got something unique, something different, and that's kind of one of the great things about the store. So I definitely, you guys have done an amazing job with what you guys have curated and figured out on it. Tell people a little bit about what you're a creator and you're a maker. Tell people a little bit about your business and what you do as well, Bree.
So my business I kind of have a couple right now.
Okay.
It's Not Therapy is the one that I originally, like when I first had some of my stuff in the shop and what I typically do markets with, which is just macrame. It's kind of mostly wall hangings. I do some like plant hangers, stuff like that, but I focus on, I think, more so wall hangings and decor, and I like bright colors. So I do a lot of pops of color with my macrame. And recently I've just, has been a hobby of mine that I've really been delving into for the last couple of years is photography.
Which you're very, very good at.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, she is.
But yeah, so I decided I wanted to just try at markets and in general and stuff too, to just kind of see how those do and start making prints and selling some of those, and just constantly trying to learn and more behind the lens and on my camera. So, and I
believe some of the prints are now available also at the Neighbors.
They are, yes. Yeah, as of recent. Yeah.
Always plugging. I gotta always plug. I'm always plugging it. So
you didn't say it. I would have said it.
Oh, I know. And I was waiting, but I feel like I'm like, I'll bring it up. So let's talk a little bit about, can you guys tell me a little bit, because the one thing, obviously, like the storefront aspect of it, by the way, I love the fact that it is wholesale versus consignment. I think that's an amazing idea of that. But what I'm really curious about is, how the heck do you guys handle, all three different elements? Because you got like three different businesses all in one roof. So like, how do you guys handle that? Because like Bree, you handle the storefront, but then is there like someone do you also handle the kitchen side? Like if there's kitchen issues or anything like that, or is there like another, or does that, Brittany, like how do you guys handle that or divide that? Or what are the challenges when it comes to something like that of having three different styles of business under one roof?
Bree does everything.
All of us do everything. I feel like that's the thing. It's such like a team environment. Like I don't think any piece could operate without the other. And I feel like we have such a good, solid team and a family feel here that it's wherever anything is needed, we're there. Whatever needs help, Yeah,
I think in the beginning, we kind of like started it out where we were thinking it would have to be pretty separate. Like, I even remember just thinking about it myself and being like, are we going to have to create like separate like groups, like group chats and things, like a retail one, a bar one, you know what I mean? Because like even though we're all a team, but she's totally right, because even though like I focus more on the bar side of things, she focuses more on retail. At the end of the day, once we are like running a shift, everybody's doing everything. You know, cocktail servers are helping to run drinks, but they might have to come and, you know, ring someone out for retail. Bartenders don't necessarily need to know everything about retail, but everybody is still expected to, you know, be able to talk to the guests about everything. So at the end of the day, everybody needs to know pretty much a little bit about everything. And then as far as the kitchen side of things, we are even helping with that as well, even though, you know, it's Chef and Sion and Devin, and then Trin, who is like their front of house manager. You know, even though they're running their show, our servers are helping to serve the guests. You know, Bree, who's working retail, is running drinks as well as helping to run like dishes to the dinner as well, or anybody working retail.
It's all hands on deck.
It's all hands on deck.
Kind of like a community affair. Everyone's kind of doing it,
right?
And kind of helping out.
Because there are just like so many moving parts, and I think sometimes too, that's what's so intriguing when a first-time customer walks in the door. They're almost, you could just see them kind of doing that, like looking around thinking like, where am I? What is this place? You know? So, and a lot of that is just, you know, giving our guests the knowledge of exactly what we have to offer and kind of really explaining all the different moving parts. But because of all those moving parts, it really is, we just have to be such a multifunctional, you know, team in everything that we do. So,
no, I totally get that. And what do you think is some of we'll go with both. What's the most challenging parts, and then what's the most rewarding or favorite parts of running the Neighbors?
Ooh, challenging right now, if I'm being honest, would be a staffing.
I was going to say, I was going to ask, is staffing's got to be, that's got to always be the most challenging one for everyone right now.
I would say, I mean, I always think about it like from the beginning, what our biggest challenges were versus now. And I think in the beginning, the challenges were with the kitchen versus us, and like just figuring out how we were going to like make all of this work and work cohesively, you know? So I feel like that was the biggest challenge in the beginning, but now it's, you know, when we bring on new employees that have never experienced anything like this before, it's challenging to kind of like get them on board to understand, like, even though you're hired as a retail associate, like, your job is not just retail. You also, like, you know, and another thing to add on to that is every single day of Neighbors, we're open throughout the week except for on Tuesdays, and every single shift is a little bit different. Like, if you're working a morning retail shift, you're most likely going to be focusing more on retail because there's not as much action going on at the bar. But if you're working an evening, and especially if it's like a Wednesday through Saturday evening, you're not only helping with retail, but you're helping to run drinks, you're helping to, like, you're focusing, your head is on like a constant swivel. And I think that has been a big challenge for us more recently than not, is just like, you know, getting everybody to that point. I think like when we opened, it was like a little bit easier because everybody was learning everything as a team. And we were like, you know, okay, we're doing this together, trial and error.
Let's figure it out.
Let's figure it out. Now, when we bring new people in, it's kind of like, how do we get this person that, you know, worked only in retail, but like wants to do the whole thing to like understand and like, you know, pick it up quickly, I guess. So, so it's interesting, but,
And I feel like, we've got a solid team on right now, but it's like staffing, I feel like just as of recent for us has been like a little bit of an issue, but I feel like talking to a lot of businesses around the area, that seems to be commonplace. I see so many places in the area too with hiring signs up, you know, so from talking to other different business owners and stuff too, that seems to be a little bit of a struggle across the board. Now,
do some of the folks, does it cross-pollinate, and like, so some of the folks that work at the Neighbors in the retail side also work at Freehand, or so there's kind of like that's a whole kind of obviously built-in family. It makes sense, a synergy aspect of it, since you know,
that's actually been really great to have that.
No, I was going to say that's got to be a blessing to be able to have that. And what about the best part, or the most rewarding or best part of running the Neighbors?
I would say for me, probably two aspects for me. One thing is just the personal relationships that I've developed with a lot of the vendors, and I just love seeing that support from the community to the community. And I feel like this area especially is so big on that, on supporting local. You know, I feel like this area of Orlando, you can drive around in your not going to see a whole lot of chain stuff around here. And I just love that these small businesses can thrive and support each other, and just how important that is. And, you know, I'll hear people say it all the time when they walk in, how much they love that concept, or if they're from out of town, I wish we had something like that, you know, like this by where I live, you know? And I think that's just so important, especially nowadays, is just to support within your community. So I feel like for me, that's like, and developing those relationships and that support. And then also just people who come in and, you know, we have so many regulars here at East End and so many people that come in, you know, sometimes we see them every week, if not twice a week. And people that just really enjoy the space. And that's just, I love to hear that people come in and think that it's a really welcoming atmosphere, because that's what we want. We want to be the friendly bar, the neighborhood bar, you know, like we want people to come in and feel welcomed. And I feel like we've really accomplished that here. And so that makes me proud of us.
Well, now I have goosebumps.
That was pretty good. That was pretty good. Do you have anything else you want to add?
I was just going to say, I feel like all of that is along the same exact lines of what I would have said as well. I feel like, yeah, it's super nice to, like, you could be having like a day, you know, like we were talking about earlier, and, you know, people come in and they're just super excited to be there. And like, even, you know, it's the same with Neighbors, and then how FreeHand just opened up another store, and people coming in just being like, I'm just so excited to have like another like business like this in the area that's like new and that supports small business, and like just everybody is super excited about it. And that at the end of the day is like the best thing, the best feeling, you know. And then on top of that, also having staff that come in, like I know for me specifically, like it's just so nice to constantly hear the people that are on our team that are just like, they love coming to work. And I'm like, I haven't really worked in a lot of situations where people are like excited to come to work, like, you know, even when they're having a day.
Yeah.
I feel like generally most of the time everybody is just like happy to be there, because it's just like, you know, the atmosphere, the energy. So
I did want to touch on that, because I feel like for me, that's the first time in a long time, if ever, that like there's no, what do they call it, the case of the Sundays or
Mondays,
or what, I don't know.
Case of the Mondays.
Yeah,
that's pretty good. If you have no idea what the saying is, that's actually really good, because I know what the Mondays are, and I know what Sunday scaries are as well.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Sunday scaries. You know, it's there has not been a day yet that I've ever dreaded going into work. I really love coming here when I've had a couple days off in a row, like, and I come in the kitchen, I'm like, genuinely, I'm like, I missed you guys, you know, and it's like we're all hugging each other, and like, yeah, it's just a really good atmosphere, and I haven't had that in a workplace in a very long time, and that means everything.
No, and I think people see that. I think people can see that or feel that when they walk in. That's one of the reasons why everyone kind of feels like it's very welcoming. I absolutely love the concept of it. I mentioned it before because I know, like, I've been to certain cities like Atlanta, and I've been to Seattle and Portland. They're very big into like their community, into like the small business. I've seen some versions of this, but not as well done as what you guys have done, because they've done it more of like, hey, you kind of have like your own little spot type of thing, but you've kind of curated it where you've kind of made it where it's like a store, but it's like, obviously you're also showcasing, you have information for every single business, so every business, so you can, like, scannable, so they can actually, you know, research them or follow them, and so it's really, you know, I absolutely love it. Obviously I'll gush even more because I'm very fortunate. I've been part of the Neighbors since the beginning, and it's one of my favorite things that I'm able to be a part of, because I love that people come and randomly will be like, oh my God, I just saw your stuff at the Neighbors. And so I was kind of curious about that, because I feel like a lot of people, like, even though it's been very popular and very well received, do you feel like you're still kind of like, it's like you're just like, no one really still knows about, like, hey, there's a second floor to to East End. Everyone just thinks it's downstairs. And there's obviously other venues and other things upstairs. So do you find that to be something that's sometimes a little bit of a challenge? Or even though there's like a beautiful mural done by Travis on the elevator to go upstairs, like, is that something that you guys feel sometimes is kind of like it, which is good and bad, the fact that no one, like, some people don't know, but it's also great because when they do find out, they're like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, has that been a challenge, being upstairs and getting the track, I guess the foot traction was it foot traction? It was the proper
Foot
word.
traffic.
Foot traffic.
yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Foot
Yeah,
traffic.
absolutely. I think it's definitely been, not terrible. Like, we're still busy all the time, but I think it has been a challenge.
Yeah.
And I think it's just because there wasn't, like you said, there wasn't anything really up here
Because it was
before.
a space. It was just an event space before. So I totally get that. The only time I remember ever being there was when they would do evening exchange, and we would have they would have vendors there.
Yeah.
Obviously, it probably helps that a lot of people start roaming around when the line waits for Domu, and they kind of come up and do that, which I think is very helpful as well. But and then the fact that you can get a cocktail and you can kind of wait, I think like all those, you provide a lot of great elements to what you guys do. But I do know, because like when I hear people tell me that, and I'm like, really, you didn't know that the Neighbors was there? They're on the second floor. They're like, oh no, I didn't know. I just did whatever. I went to Gideon's or whatever, and I went to Freehand and I left, and I was like, oh well, you should go upstairs and check out what's there. I'm like, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think,
There's still people, I feel like we've been open a little over a year now. And people, there's still every day that'll come in and they're like, I had no idea you guys were up here.
Yeah.
And, I come to the market every week, and I just had no idea. And I think it is helping too, because the second floor just in general is starting to develop a little more.
Yes.
So we have Wafu up here now. We have La Femme Boutique up here.
Mm-hmm.
Carla Poma just moved upstairs as well with her bracelet zapping. So I feel like just in general, the second floor is going to get a little more love.
Yeah, which was good, because at one point it did have quite a bit of vendors as well, and they had like a little bookstore, it had a whole bunch of different things on there. I mean, the East End in general is a great concept. I mean, it's I almost sometimes wish the building was like bigger, so that we can to be able to provide and do more because of what it's been able to provide to the city, and the fact that it's an Audubon Park. Like you said, a lot of different small businesses. Like, you're right. I don't think I've seen. There are no chain. Maybe Chick-fil-A off of Colonial, and that's still like a little distance away. But other than that, you're kind of looking at quite a bit of small businesses that have been around for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's the nice thing too, because we are adjacent to so many other great places up and down Kareen, so I feel like the market does so well too, because you could spend a whole day on foot just walking this strip from Blue Gardens to here, especially if someone's visiting in town. And so whenever anyone's coming in and asking for ideas, whether it be food, shopping, just outdoor things, I'm like, really, you could just stay on Kareen if you wanted to.
Yeah, so true.
Yeah, it's definitely the sweet. I call it like the sweet area, because like this is like the sweet district, because you have downstairs, you have Gideon's, then across the street you have Kelly's. You also have is it called Light and Sugar? Light on the it's
Sugar Dough.
Sugar Dough.
Yeah.
Sugar Dough.
The salty.
The salty. I mean, there's so many different options, and it's all walking distance, which is the beauty of the whole thing. So yeah, definitely you can have a full meal, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and tons of dessert while you're here, which is great. What advice would you give someone who's wanting to start something? Well, first, before we do that, what advice would you give someone who, because of the fact that you look at different vendors and different things like that, I'm kind of curious, what advice would you give someone who's wanting to not get into the Neighbors? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But what advice would you give that, like, things that you look for or that they should consider when you're looking at a different vendor to possibly have as a vendor, or a possible vendor in the store? Maybe that would be able to something that might be able to help them, like saying, hey, you should really have a strong presence in, or things that you guys consider when you're looking at social or things like that in general.
Yeah, I feel like maybe just giving a more specific direction, because sometimes people will just be like, oh, here's my Instagram. But if it's more of a generic Instagram and not specifically geared towards their products, it's a little hard to tell what they carry. Or some people carry such a broad line of things, and really, I guess, a more focused of what are you interested in wholesaling, or what do you think potentially out of your top sellers do you think that would do well in the shop? And ultimately, I think for the shop, we're just looking for something new all the time. So sometimes it's good too if it's something you don't see in our shop, even as if you're just a friend of a maker coming in and you're like, I really don't see anything like this in here, So it's always just trying to add something new as well. And like I said, too, sometimes it is a limited space. So even if there's people who reach out and we might not be able to stock somebody at the moment, just that it's still worth reaching out, because it might be something that we can keep, especially as the holiday months come in. We start flying through stuff on the shelves so quickly that we're always looking for new vendors to carry potentially down the road as well. And we just ideally too, we don't like to compete too much with what some other makers have in the area, since there are some other local shops with consignment too. So we just like to be aware of that so that we're not competing with other local shops and what they carry as well. So if it's somebody who carries with a partner right across the street, then it might either if they have different products they could carry with us, or vice versa, so
No, it makes sense.
But yeah, and I feel like the easiest way to reach out is either whether you just pop in and, have a conversation with myself, or just emailing us, finding us on the website, shooting us an email and just saying, I feel like but it's just, for me, it's a little easier when it's more focused and you have, whether it be a wholesale line sheet, but then again, some artists have never done wholesale before, which is perfectly fine, because if they would like help walking through that process and what that process looks like, I'm always open to talking to people about that as well. So
that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm always curious about that aspect of it. Like when usually, and I always like to be able to share that, because I know sometimes folks get a little overwhelmed when it comes to the wholesale aspect of it. I think it's a great idea, and I like just the idea of being able to do fair and different things like that. But the fact that you're able to kind of be able to provide, and I figure like getting something from someone who actually is seeing in vendors would be able to provide some context or better information, because sometimes small businesses have no idea where to go or how to start. So that's something that I appreciate the feedback on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
What advice would you guys give for someone wanting to start something in general? It could be anything. I like open-ended on that, because not everyone wants to start a business. So I figure I'm like, but in general, like what are some things that you guys have seen has been successful for, and what advice would you give for wanting to start something?
I know it sounds probably cliche, but if you like have an idea and you want to start something and you even have like the smallest like thought that it could probably work, that just take the risk and do it. I know that sounds silly, but I feel like a lot of people might kind of like sit back on it because they're thinking about all the things that could possibly go wrong with it. And I think that's why probably a lot of people wouldn't start their own thing because of that. And I could, I know that like just watching, I obviously can't take most of the credit for this, because if it wasn't for Jacob, I promise you I would not be in this position today. But watching him, like when it came down to starting his own business, he kind of was like, I don't think I ever want to work for anybody ever again. I'm going to start a business. And I mean, from that moment, he just worked his ass off until the very end to figure out exactly how he could do it. He built a business plan. He had a small idea and he's like, let's just do it. And along the way, that small idea kind of evolved into more and more and more and more. So instead of like, I guess the advice would be, instead of like thinking in the beginning, like you have to have it all planned out and everything work, like take the risk, try to make it happen and just do it.
Yeah. What about you, Brie?
I think to add to that, she's absolutely correct in everything she said, because I feel like fear is the number one thing that kind of holds people back. It's the what ifs, the unknowns. But then also to understand that often in those times, instant gratification is not a thing. It's going to take a lot of work, a lot of dedication.
Ding, ding, ding.
And so you just have to be patient with it and keep going if you really want it, and just don't give up, and just understand that there will be hiccups along the way. There always is in life in general, So, but I think really just like sticking with it and just knowing that it's a labor of love and it's going to take time and there's a process,
Yes.
Why do you think and I know I kind of know the answer, but I'm kind of curious, why do you think people go that route where they basically I guess, and want that immediate gratification? I mean, obviously I know everyone likes to feel special or to have that warm feeling like, oh, this idea works. But can you talk a little bit about some of those times when maybe you feel like, man, like what the hell are we doing? Like, and then what happens when that happens? Like, what do you guys do when you have those moments where you're like, what am I doing? Like, because you're going to have, I mean, it's amazing what you guys are saying about the aspect of jumping in and having that thought of like, hey, I have this idea and it's going to work because I'm going to work my ass off. But you're going to have those moments around that journey, because that is a long journey before you start feeling that gratification. What do you guys recommend, or how have you guys battled those moments when you have like those crappy moments? You know what I mean? Where you're kind of trying to like, like you start self-doubting yourself. You start kind of having like that, your energy's getting zapped because you're having some failures along the way. What have you guys done to kind of overcome some of that?
I mean, I know for us, it's kind of just taking a step back and remembering why you're doing it, and remembering, like, I guess the big why or whatever. Remembering everything that you like, the reason that you're doing it, the reason that you started it, the reason that you love it. And then if for whatever reason, like, something isn't going right, you kind of just have to ask yourself, okay, well, what can we do to pivot, and what can we do to make it right, and what can we do to improve? Because, you know, I know for us with Neighbors, it's like all trial and error. I mean, for Freehand, you know, their way of evolving was, you know, starting from one thing and adding and kind of going that route, and like whatever wasn't working, they were taking out. But it's the same for Neighbors in the aspect of like we're still pivoting and figuring out what's working for us. And so, you know, the times that you get discouraged and stuff, you just have to kind of, I know it sounds a cliche again, but you just have to remind yourself why you were there and why you're doing it and why you love what you do.
Yeah.
And you just keep going.
Yeah.
Same thing, Bri?
You just keep going.
I feel like that's a huge part of it, is the why and why you're doing it, but then also allowing yourself grace. In those moments of failure, or when you are just giving yourself grace, which I feel like is for whatever reason, it's a hard practice. I feel like we're not always taught that, you know, but just to know that it's okay to accept those kind of things and like give yourself grace in those situations, no matter how you're feeling, you know, whether you're upset or angry or frustrated, or, you know, if things just aren't going your way. Like you said, I feel like it is so important. It's one of, you know, just something. I feel like this is almost in a way rolls over to like one of your mottos in our day to day is you got to speed up or slow down to speed up.
Slow down to speed up. Yeah.
Slow down to speed up, you know, is just so really like taking a step back, you know, because it's like that thing, like you drop something, you pick it up, you drop it again, and you get frustrated, you know, it's like, just take a second, laugh about it. And then, you know, like, I feel like, you know, otherwise you'll just keep digging yourself in a hole if you can't like remember the whys. Also just give yourself grace and maybe, keep things a little more lighthearted than always as serious, you know?
No.
So
I think that's great. I also think that you should like be able to celebrate, like take the time to remember and celebrate those victories along the way. Because sometimes maybe, and then sometimes I even tell people, and I tend to forget this because I've been in business long enough now that I should practice what I preach, but I tell people, create a little jar and just write all the victories. And then when you have those moments where you really need it, go back and look at it. I've also noticed that whenever I have those self-doubt days, somehow the universe hears it and I somehow get something. The universe talks back to me and tells me something. It'll be a random person sending me a message going, I absolutely love what you do, or this is so great. Here's a picture of me with a sandwich. And you're like, oh, okay, this is why I'm doing it. This is what works. And so, and that's one of the reasons why I become like a cheerleader and want to tell people those things, because no one wants to feel those moments, you know? So I definitely appreciate it. It's definitely great insight on it because, and it's funny because the way you said, like, you know, go slow to speed up. My grandfather used to say something to me like that in Spanish. I'm not going to tell you what it is in Spanish because you probably don't understand, but what it basically translates to is dress me slowly. I'm in a rush. Was what it was in Spanish. And he used to always say that to me. And I was like, what are you talking about? And that was the whole premise of it is like, slow down, take a deep breath, slow down, and then go. And so, you know, that's perfect. That's great. Do you, my last big question is tell people how they can follow, how they can come to the shop, give any details that you want to be able to share so people can actually follow online and also come by into the store.
Yeah. So it's, the Neighbors ORL is our Instagram. Same thing. Yeah. The Neighbors Orlando on Facebook. We have the neighborsorl.com as our website. What else?
I feel like through those links as well, like you can find whoever are
the vendors.
The vendors.
Found all the vendors in there.
And then the rotating, you know, with Camille, you can kind of figure out.
You can go on there and like if you wanted to book a chef's table, you're able to go on our website to book the chef's table through there.
And we are tucked away in the back corner of the second floor
of the East End Market.
Of the East End Market.
But you are able to go up the side stairs of East End.
Yes.
We put a sign there, but sometimes I feel like people don't know that they can use the stairs.
They could use the stairs, they could use the elevators, or they can use the other stairs. There's three ways to get to the Neighbors.
Yes.
And just for people coming on the weekends too, because parking does get a little bananas. And so I know sometimes that might deter people from coming here. They come in, you know, it's kind of difficult to find a parking spot. And I know we're trying to make it more known through our websites and East Ends Instagram and stuff, but there is additional parking over at Audubon Elementary, I believe it
it's
is.
behind the school.
Yeah, behind the school, and there's a ton of parking, and it's just like a walk, maybe a block walk. So
if you see the shell on Corinne, it's like right behind there, and it's Audubon Park K to 8.
Yeah.
And street parking on Corinne. Yep.
Just don't park in people's neighborhoods and in the church and all that stuff.
Right in front of their house. Sometimes they get a little.
No, I totally. Yeah. No, I get it. Okay, one last thing I'm kind of curious on is being able to share the importance of sharing, because obviously you have 75 vendors, so you would hope that 75 vendors would also be able to share, the whole idea of the aspect of it. Like you guys are obviously like kind of sharing, showcasing your vendors, but the vendors that are in the store, but those vendors also should be showcasing you guys. How important is that aspect of the importance of success of being able to share and kind of help promote one another, and that creating that synergy when it comes to that, and being able to ask for that kind of thing for not only for a small business, but just like as a small business as yours, but also the small businesses that are interacting with you.
Yeah, I feel like that's like one of the great things, and probably what allowed us the success that we had in the first year, being that a lot of people weren't familiar with our location, was word of mouth was everything, as was social media. And I feel like that was such an integral part too with all the vendors. Every time a vendor would drop off, they'd post a video or a story.
Yes, definitely.
Everybody's sharing. I can't count how many people come in and they're like, I think Nina and Marley were in dropping off, Cubans the other day. And they're like, oh, the Soulshine Co. Because we just had added them to the shop, and she took a picture of it and sent it to her. And she's like, look, I spotted you, And I feel like same with the cocktails and stuff too. Just like really social media has worked wonders for us, I feel like. And
I know we really haven't talked a lot about the cocktail side of things, but I feel like it's been like a big thing with social media. Like we come up with a new cocktail. And
I also love the fact that you guys have mocktails, which I think is very popular as well, which is great.
Yeah, we have a couple mocktails on there, but it's been like nice because we'll have like one or two new cocktails per month, and it's crazy the amount of people that we have that come in that are like, oh, I saw that posted on your Instagram. It looks really good. Like, we have like we just launched our spring infusion, and it has Lucky Charms marshmallows on the top of it, and it's like this purple. It has like a taro powder, so it's like a purple color, and people are like, what is that drink? Like we need to go see it, just from people like us posting on social media, other people coming in posting on social media, the vendors coming in and posting that they're there dropping off and getting a drink and posting on, so all of that has been helped so much for us.
And it's been great too, being that some of our vendors are from all over Florida. Like just an example I can think off the top of my head is Space Coast Spreads. She's typically over, I think, Melbourne area, and so she has one of her customers that would buy frequently from her, but if she's like, now I'm carried here, like you can come in your backyard and pick it up if you need to. So I think there was one of her loyal customers that came in here and bought like 5 jars the other day of her candied jalapenos. That's just awesome. Because he's like, I love them. Like they're close to home now, So I feel like that that outreach too of, the clientele and how you can get to them, especially coming in the summer months, because it's, as as a fellow vendor, summer gets a little harder to do markets, whether it be because of the heat, the rain. So I feel like it helps open up that other avenue to still have your products moving in those summer months when it's a little harder to run markets. So
yeah, it's a blessing. I absolutely love being a part of a vendor and being part of the Neighbors. It's one of my favorite things, and so I definitely appreciate that. One last thing about cocktails, you guys do happy hour. Is it like 3 to 6? Is that what it is? Tell people a little bit about that.
Sure. So Wednesday through Friday we do 3 to 6, and then Saturday we don't have happy hour. Sunday we do 6 to 9 as like a little bit of like a later night happy hour, and we kind of consider it like our industry happy hour.
Yeah.
And then Mondays we do all day happy hour.
Oh.
So and then the happy hour menu always stays the same. It's $6. We have like these basically 3 ingredient cocktails. So there's like a vodka, rum, a gin, a tequila, whatever. So there are $6, and then we have $5 wines and $5 beers. So there's like 5 or 6 beers on there, and then a white and a red for the wines. So
it's awesome. And you got plenty of food, so you can eat, have a little cocktail, do some shopping.
Yeah.
hopefully the more cocktails and food you eat, the more shopping you also do. It's kind of like a perfect synergy for like cycle that it kind of goes with.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate Brittany and Bree. I really appreciate both of you taking the time. I know I've been dying to talk to you guys for a while now, so I really appreciate you guys finding some time to chat with me. That's our show for today, so thank you so much
Thank
to
you.
Brittany and to
Awesome,
Bree
yeah.
for being
Thank you
on
for
the
having
show.
us.
Oh,
Yeah, it
thank
was
you.
fun. Thank you.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for having lunch with me. Make sure to check them out. If you're in East End Market, I mean, hey, no excuse. If you're in East End Market, definitely come upstairs. You're already supporting small businesses. Support even more small businesses. Have a little cocktail. Definitely check them out. If you enjoyed the show, definitely make sure to subscribe. If you want to support my brand, check out Deli Fresh Threads. You can go to delifreshthreads.com. You can go to the Neighbors, do some shopping there. By all means, if you come here and you do see products of small businesses that you like or items that you like, take a picture of them, post it, tag us, tag the small business, tag the Neighbors. Kind of like what Bree mentioned, just word of mouth is just such an important thing. Thank you. Until next time, keep eating sandwiches and follow your passion. Thanks, everyone.